Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. I'm excited. I got a mastermind alumni here for you guys today, and she's a podcast expert. So you guys are gonna love her. Aeoliana, thank you so much for being here. Can you just tell everybody who you are and what you do and give like a quick little intro to yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Faith. So like you said, my name is Aeoliana. I live in Tampa, Florida. So yay, hurricanes. Um, I am a mom. I'm a hockey mom. I'm a wife. I'm a paralegal full time. And I also run my business where I do podcast launch strategy coaching.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here. We wanted to talk a little bit today about mindset and how that impacts business because I know a lot of you guys listening maybe feel stuck in your business or overwhelmed in your business. And we coach a lot on all those things in the mastermind. And so I wanted to have Juliana on to just share her experience about how the mindset has helped her business. So what do you think the biggest difference was when you came into the mastermind? Was that what you were looking for, or was that something you knew you needed, or just an extra bonus, or where were you kind of at when you came in?
So when I came into the mastermind, I didn't know it was what I needed in a nutshell. Like I had no idea that the things I would learn in the mastermind, like I came into it strictly for business, strictly for like marketing, help with sales, things like that. And I didn't really understand the correlation between my mindset and why things were stuck or things weren't working or all of the roadblocks that happen when
Yeah.
you own a business.
I see this a lot with entrepreneurs, right? Because I think when we're employees, we're kind of taught like you just need the steps. If you get the
Mm-hmm.
steps, then you're successful because you just
Right.
do what you're told and you do the steps and you do your job the right way, and then you're good at your job, and then you're successful at your job. And I think
Right.
people try to entrepreneur that way, right? They're like, give me,
Right.
then they come to the mastermind, they're like, Faith, give me steps.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. You're always like, okay, so what do I do? Like to be successful, give me the recipe for how do I do this the right way? And then getting into the mastermind, I learned that it's not like there's not one way to do it. Everybody's different and everybody works differently. And so to come in with that mindset that, like you said, that employee mindset where I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to join a group. And I joined groups before. The mastermind wasn't the first one, but the mastermind was the first one where I realized it's not what I do, but it's my thoughts and how I feel about the work that I'm doing. The results are going to come regardless of what I do, but it's what is my mindset going into it? What are my feelings? What are my thoughts going into what I'm doing? And that's what creates the results. And
Yeah.
like those light bulb moments of realizing, oh crap, like it really is up to me and no one can tell me what to do. I have to figure it out for myself and I have to do it. I can't wait for someone else to tell me what to do because it's not coming.
It's hard because we're never taught to do that, right? We're in
Right.
school and in business, like we're kind of taught do what you're told and like do it the
Right.
right way and like do it good. And that's kind of
Yep.
it. And so when people try to start a business and they're like, but how do I do it good? Like, what's the right way to do it? Tell me the right way
Right.
to do it. And I'm
Right.
like, everybody I know so many, six-figure and multiple six-figure online business owners, and all of their business structures and strategies are very different. And so
Mm-hmm.
that just shows me like, all of the strategies really can work, but it's like what's going to work best for you
Right.
and what are you going to be able to execute over a long period of time. I think that's where the mindset stuff impacts a lot more than people realize, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Definitely the consistency. Definitely making sure, which is like I was telling you off, when we were talking earlier before we got started, that the majority of my focus now with my podcast launch strategy is more on the mindset because you can have the best tech in the world. You can have the most expensive mic and headset and like all the bells and whistles. But if you're not working on your mindset and you're not working on those roadblocks and being consistent, those things don't matter because you're going to end up quitting before you really get any kind of traction, because you're not working on the real issue, the real roadblock.
Yeah.
And so, I've really, thanks to you, and the mastermind, I've really honed in on focusing on that mindset piece more than anything else.
Yeah. What are kind of your top tips if somebody's listening and they've been wanting to start a
Mhm.
podcast, but they're like putting it off and like, what are kind of your top tips for people to pull the trigger and get it done if that's on their list of things to do?
Just do it. There would be, and that's a really simple tip, and it sounds very easy and hard at the same time. I think a lot of people get caught up in, like I said, the tech, and then they also get caught up in the false idea that someone else has already said what they're trying to say. So,
Mm,
they'll look at it and they'll say, okay, well, I've already heard this somewhere else. Why is someone going to listen to me versus listening to somebody else? And what I tell people is your magic, your special sauce, whatever you want to call it, is you. No one else can say things the way you are going to say them. And so I just tell people, even if you're recording on your phone and you're doing a voice note and you release, that, just get started. The more times that you do it and the longer that you do it, the easier it's going to get and the better you're going to get, as you're going along.
yeah.
But staying stuck and not doing anything isn't going to get you the results that you want. You have to take that action. You have to take that step and just do it and surround yourself with people that are going to support you. A lot of us end up starting, podcast or content or whatever, and we have people that don't understand why we're doing it or the purpose behind why we're doing it. And that's another thing the mastermind was great for me, was having the support of people that were just like me, doing the same things I was at different levels, and being able to learn from the other people in the mastermind that it's okay, things are going to be difficult, things are going to be tough, but I know why I'm doing it. And that support is so important. So those would be the two things I'd
Yeah.
say.
I love the like just do it tip, right? And it is like most things in business, I'm like the best things are like so simple, right? Everybody's looking
Mm-hmm.
for these really complicated strategies. And I'm like the best business strategies, the best kind of things that will change your business are very simple, but they're hard to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so just do it. It's like, oh, it sounds so easy, but it's like it requires you to be willing to be a beginner, to be bad
Right.
at it, to not be good. I'm like, don't try to be a good podcaster. Just try to get it out. And then over
Yep.
time you become a good podcaster, right?
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And I think that mindset is because we've been taught growing up that if things are easy, they're not worth it.
Mm,
Or if something's easy, like, okay, wait for the other shoe to drop because something's bad's going to happen. And so we have in the back of our mind that thought that, well, it can't be that easy. It has to be difficult, because when it's difficult, that's when I'm going to learn. And the
yeah.
reality is, you don't learn unless you do. So the actual doing, whatever, whenever you decide to do it, it's not difficult. It's the decision beforehand to actually step out and do it. That's the difficult thing.
Yeah, totally. And no matter what you guys are doing, whether it's a podcast or YouTube or email or whatever it is that you want to do, content that you want to do that you're putting off, I'm always like, the first 10 you do are going to be your worst ones. So just get them
Mm-hmm.
over with. Like,
Yep.
get them over with as fast as possible. Like, your first 10 podcasts are probably not going to be your proudest, best work of your career, right? But over time, like, you'll get more comfortable and you'll get more skilled. And I always think it's like so worth doing. What are like your favorite perks about podcasting? Like, why do you pitch everybody on starting a podcast? Why should they start a podcast?
So I love podcasts. I've always loved podcasts. It's just such a neat medium for so many different reasons. Like, I've used podcasts for entertainment, for learning. I learned how to edit and produce podcasts listening to a podcast. Super meta, I know. Um,
Podcast about podcasting about podcasting.
yeah, like, and I've learned so many lessons about mindset and about myself, and parenting, and just anything and everything is in a podcast. And you really do feel like the person is talking to you, even though you know they're not. Having that intimacy of having it in your ears and listening to it, there's a connection that's already set up there. Um, and I think if you're a coach or you're a service provider or anything like that, it's a great way to promote what you have, your coaching, your services, your products, whatever that is. If you just want to do a podcast, because I firmly believe that if you feel like doing a podcast is because somewhere deep down inside, you know that there's someone out there that needs to hear something that you have to say that you haven't said yet.
Yeah.
And I think that if you don't do a podcast and you've thought about it, you're being selfish and you're doing a disservice to those people that need to hear whatever you have to say.
Yeah.
So that's my tough love moment. And
I get you. I think too, like having a podcast can be such a great asset for your business. And even if you guys are listening and you want to have one, but you don't have the bandwidth to do one every week, like first of all, you could
Mhm.
start just doing one once a month or once a
Absolutely.
quarter. And then
Yep.
the other thing I've been coaching some people on lately that I think is an interesting idea is like just doing 5 episodes or 10 episodes that are like your core things and then
Mhm.
recirculating those episodes on social media and in your newsletter and just linking the same episodes over and over again that are like the things you're like, everybody should know these things. Like
Mhm.
everybody that works with me struggles with this. Like, I think that can be a great lead magnet and a great asset that you can circulate over and over. So
Yeah.
there's lots of ways you guys can use it that's not just publishing every week. Because I think something that gets in people's way is like, well, then I'm going to have to do it every week forever. And like,
Right.
how can I do that? And the other thing I'll tell you too is there's no podcast police, right? So if you
Nope.
miss a week, it's fine. You
Yeah.
can just make one the next week. Like nobody's going to come arrest you. Do you have any tips for like making it sustainable if somebody's scared of that, where they're like, I don't think I can do it consistently?
Yeah, I have a few tips. So, first off, make sure that you are gauging your energy.
Mm,
So, don't try, like, let's say that you get started and you're really, really excited, and you're like, I'm going to put out an episode every single week. And then something happens and you lose traction because your energy, our energy fluctuates from day to day, from week to week. So start off small, like you said, start off once a month and then build up from there once you gauge your energy and your levels. Another thing I'll say is that a lot of people, when they look at podcasts, they look at, oh my gosh, I have to do this podcast and it has to be an hour long, just like so and so's podcast. That is not true.
that's a
My
good
episodes,
one.
yeah,
Yeah.
my episodes, like my podcast is coming out in December, and my episodes, I think my longest episode is 17 minutes. You had Maneksha on Power Hour a
Mhm.
few weeks ago. Her marketing podcast is amazing, and
Yeah.
they're 5-minute episodes.
Yeah.
So, as long as you're giving the value and you're saying what you need to say, the length of time doesn't matter. If you don't fill 30 minutes, don't stress yourself out about doing 30 minutes. The length of your podcast, like you said, there's no podcast police. The
Yeah.
length of your podcast can be whatever the hell you want it to be. It
Yeah, I didn't
doesn't,
even think about that, but we're doing that now. So I'm getting ready to launch a new personal development brand. I think it'll be out in the next couple weeks. It might be out by the time you guys listen to this. But the whole spiel about it is it's like self-help and personal development, and it's a different workshop every week that are high impact but low time. And so it's 10 minutes or less, like a tip that can change your life in 10 minutes or less. And it's
Mhm.
literally the whole marketing and spiel we're doing going to be doing around it is that it's not long. It's
Yeah,
like it's not gonna be hard and it doesn't take a long time. That's like the
right,
whole pitch of the brand. So I think that's like a great thing to remember is like everybody pretty much has the thought, I don't have enough time. And
right.
so having a short one can even be an asset. And then having a long one is fine too. Like people
Right.
definitely listen to long form content. And so it
Mhm.
just goes to show whatever works for you
Right.
can work for your business. Don't try to make yourself do a strategy. If doing an hour-long podcast every week is going to make you exhausted and hate your business, like do not do that.
Right. And
Like,
then my last tip would be just be okay being a beginner. Like,
Mhm.
give yourself grace for being a beginner. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be like these multi-million dollar podcasts with tons of people working behind the scenes. um just give yourself the grace, give yourself the time, enjoy being a beginner, because that's when you learn the biggest lessons, is when you're starting out. I think so many of us try to rush from one point to the next because we just want to get successful and we want to have everybody listening and we want to get the thing done, that we don't pay attention to those small moments as a beginner. And it's like you always say, it's like, it's a baby podcast, like
Yeah.
it's a baby business. You wouldn't expect your podcast to pay for your bills like you wouldn't expect your baby to pay for your bills.
Yeah.
So let it be what it is in that moment, and just learn from every step of the way.
I think a lot of times too, when people start businesses, they see the end result and they're like, I want to do that, right? But I always think about it like, if I were like, I want to be Taylor Swift, but like Taylor Swift has practiced music for thousands of hours. Like
Right.
she has, like you have to want to do that. Like you have to want to like be on stage and do those hours and do the lessons and put the work in. You don't just get to go be on stage at the end. And I think people look at my business and online businesses kind of like that, where they're like, oh, I want that. And I'm like, well, I've done hundreds and hundreds of podcast
Right.
episodes. I've coached hundreds of hours. I've written thousands of emails. And it's like I didn't just like have what I have. It's like you have to want the whole journey. And I think
Yep.
if you can sell yourself on like the whole package of like, yeah, I'm one of my thoughts I'm using a lot right now is like, I want to work hard at this. I want to work
Mm-hmm.
hard at this, right? I want to be great and I want to have great offers for people and I want to have more ways to help people and I want to work hard at everything I'm doing. And I think just selling your brain and getting your brain on board with like that way, when it's hard, my brain's not like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. We should quit. I didn't know it was going to be like this. It's like,
Right.
oh yeah, I knew it was going to be
I knew
hard.
it was going to be hard. Yeah. Yeah.
And you're
I
like
think
ready for
too,
it.
like sometimes growing up, I remember people used to always tell me not to think in worst case scenarios. But now with my business, it's almost like helped me to think in worst case scenarios, because I can tell my brain, okay, I already know I'm going to mess up this way and this way, and this is going to happen, and nobody's going to buy and nobody's going to join, and it's going to be like a complete crapshoot. And I'm okay because I've
Yeah.
already prepared my brain for that outcome. And so the same thing when people are thinking about doing a podcast is, okay, already think to yourself, you're going to suck. It's going to be terrible. Nobody's going to listen. And prepare yourself for that worst case scenario so that if it comes, it may not, but if it comes, you're prepared and you already have a plan of action of what you're going to do to kind of, you know, dovetail somewhere else to do, maybe you need to change your topic. Maybe you need to, lengthen or shorten the episodes. I know for me, starting out now, I'm using my blog posts and I'm just taking my blog posts and turning those into podcast episodes. So repurpose something that you already have.
Yeah.
Don't try to start from scratch, but if you do need to start from scratch, give yourself the grace to be a beginner.
Yeah. I love that tip about, well, I love what you said about, you know, people always say like don't think about the worst case
Mhm.
scenario, but I think in business you really cannot make business decisions or investments if you don't look at the worst case scenarios, right? If I
Right.
were going to buy a business or buy a house, real estate, or do some kind of business investment like that, we're going to look at what is the risk, how risky is it, what is the worst outcome, like could the business survive that? Like I'm never going to risk my personal financial well-being and the financial well-being of the business. And so any investments we're making, if I want to bring in a team member, I'm like, what's the potential risk? What's the loss? Like, can the business sustain that? And I think it's important as a businesswoman and a business person, like you look at the worst case scenarios. And I hear people all the time, like, just like make the best decisions out of the best case scenario. And I'm like, yeah, you should consider that, but like you need to consider all possibilities because the reality
Right.
is you're going to do things in your business that don't work. I don't know anybody that
Mm-hmm.
has done everything they've done has paid out, that they've gotten ROI on every investment they've made, where everything goes your way. I don't know anybody that that's happened to. So it's like you got to be prepared for either situation. Maybe you
Right.
do launch a podcast and it never takes off and nobody listens, but you probably, I would argue it's still worth it because you'll probably get better at speaking your message. You
Right.
probably get more clear at what you want to do. There's something really useful for marketing about having to sit down and just verbalize something every
Right.
week. I think that's very, very valuable and arguably still worth your time, even if it never becomes like some big part of your business.
Yeah. And the crazy thing about podcasts too is that they're out there for so long that you may record something now and it may not get traction for another year or two. And then all of a sudden, everybody's listening because it was the right time for those people to hear what you needed to hear. Like,
Yeah.
I know being in the mastermind with you, there were tons of times where you would say something and it didn't register. And I remember, I think I did a coaching with you once where we were talking about that when you take action, you either get the result that you wanted or the lesson that you needed. And I remember telling you that I heard you say that so many times. And it wasn't until I was talking to my 12-year-old that it really registered. I was like, oh crap, Faith tells me this every week. And I'm not like, it didn't register until I told him and I was trying to teach him the same thing. And so it's the same thing. You could put content out there and nobody sees it at the beginning. And then magically at some point, somebody listens to it and it's exactly what they needed to hear in that exact moment.
Yeah, that's a good reminder too when we're talking about people being scared about "Oh, everybody's already said that or this has already been said is like people need to hear things so many times because we
Mm-hmm.
hear that in the mastermind all the time. People tell me that where they're like, "Oh my gosh, I've heard you say blah 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 blah, but I like this happened the other day and now I get it,
Mm-hmm.
right?" Or
Yep.
I heard so and so being coached and that like changed everything. And I know I've heard you say it so many times, but this time it's like I have this whole new understanding. And I think that's just how human beings learn. Like most of us don't just hear something once and we're like, okay, I totally get it, especially
Right.
not mindset stuff, right? It's like
Right.
hear it over and over. So I think not feeling like you have to have something brand new to say every week, I think can take the pressure off of people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And repurposing is great. I tell clients that I've worked with, um, take episodes that you know did really well. You know, let's say that you have one episode that did really well, that you had a lot of people listen to it. Break it up, expand on whatever you were talking about in that episode. Break it down into a series where you go into separate, bullet points in that episode in other episodes and expand on your thoughts. If it's something that you did a while ago, go back and look at your research again. Go back and see if the trends are different. Go back and see if people are saying different things on that topic. Bring in guests to talk about whatever subject it was that did really well. And
Yeah.
so there's so much content in a podcast for so many other different avenues that, I mean, the ROI on a podcast isn't fast, but it can be a long standing thing for any business, I think.
Yeah. I think it helps with sales a lot too. And if you guys are listening, if there's people listening and you feel like I have an audience, but they're not buying, I'll hear
Mm-hmm.
that. The most common things I hear are like, I don't have an audience. Like, how do I get an audience?
Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing is like, well, I built this audience, but like I'm not getting any money in my bank account. Like now what do I do? And if people aren't buying or you feel like they're not buying as much as you want, I think doing a podcast can give them the chance to trust you and to know
Right.
what you're about and to feel like they like you and they know you and all those different things that make buying easier. So I
Right.
think you can get an ROI if you have an audience already, you can get an ROI on it very fast, I think,
Yeah.
arguably on a podcast. So I think it can be a really good sales strategy and nurture strategy for
It's
sure.
funny you just said trust because that's exactly what was running in my brain is like a podcast allows people to trust you. Like they're agreeing to put you in their ears whenever your podcast comes out. They're
Yeah.
agreeing that that's a lot more intimate than an email or a video that they may or may not see. A podcast is something that they're hearing your voice, they're hearing how you teach, how you speak. And that's another thing I tell people is they're so worried about editing, like editing things out and trying to make it perfect. And I said, well, you don't want to make it perfect. Edit what you need to, but if at the end of the day, when you listen to that podcast, if it doesn't sound like you edited too much, because you want to be able to, if you run into that person on the street, you want to be able for them to say, oh, they sound exactly like they did on the podcast. You want them to be able to expect who you really are and hear who you are, whether it's on the podcast or in person.
Yeah. I'll say too, like I've worked with a lot of people and I've seen this in my business too. Like when people know you and they trust you, you can get away with some really like not good marketing. Like a lot of us are
Mm-hmm.
not naturally good at sales and we're not naturally good at marketing. And that's, we got in business to help people with their mindset or help people with their health or, teach people holistic things or whatever you're passionate about is usually why people start a business, right? Like the ones we help people with usually. And when people feel like they know you and trust you, they'll kind of forgive if your sales page isn't that great, or they'll kind of forgive
Right.
if you don't have a sales page and you're just like, do you want to do this thing? Like, I'm going to do this thing. I have 5 spots. Like, you can get away with a lot more kind of half-ass marketing when people
Right.
feel like they know you. You don't have to be marketing at such a high level, and that's really important right now in a the market's a lot more sophisticated and demanding a lot more touch points, a lot higher marketing. It's just a lot more sophisticated than it was a few years ago. And so if you feel like I know my marketing is not that good and I know I'm never going to be the best at sales, the way around that is building a lot of trust with your audience so they feel like they
Mm-hmm.
know you and they feel like they like you. I think a podcast is a great way to do that. Video is a great way to do that.
Yeah.
But all those different options.
Yeah. You can't
Tell,
fake those.
yeah, yeah. Tell everybody, where can we stalk you online? Where can we follow you? If you guys want a podcast, you definitely have to hire her. Where do we find you?
So I am on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. It's look for Aeoliana on all the things. I am also, my website is topshelfvirtualservices.com. So I'm there and yeah, come, shoot me a DM or a Facebook message or any of those things. I love replying on DMs and messages and things like that. And I would love to help anyone and everyone who is wanting to start a podcast or just has questions. I go live in my Facebook group, answering questions if you have any. So yeah, just come find me. My name is pretty easy to find. So it's
We'll put
very
the link.
unique.
We'll put the links for you guys too.
Yeah.
And then you have a tech playbook, right?
Yes.
Tell them about that too.
So it's called the Podcast Launch and Tech Playbook. And it's basically a really simple checklist to go through defining your vision, planning your content strategy, setting up your podcasting infrastructure, equipping yourself with the right equipment, things like that. Just really quick bullet points of what you can do to get started very quickly to get that ball rolling.
Yeah, so if the tech stuff is hanging you up, I would definitely go grab that. I would definitely take her up on her offer. I'm like, if somebody offers for you guys to DM them, I would take take them up on it.
Yes,
Like I
do
would
it.
go get that free help if you're bootstrapping and on a budget like so many of us are. It's like when we have experts on here that offer to help you guys, I would use those resources. If you guys want help with your mindset and taking action and you're really stuck, come in the mastermind. We do coaching. We have all kinds of support for you. And I'd love to have you in there. And I think that's all we have for you. Do we have any
Okay.
final words for them? What else do we need to say to them? Just do it, get
Um,
it done.
just do it, get it done, give yourself grace. You can do this. You're awesome. You have everything in you that you need to do whatever it is you want to do. You don't need to wait for anyone to give you any affirmation or any validation. Exactly who you are and what you bring to this world is just what it needs to be. You don't need any more than that.
Well, damn, that's the final word right there. Okay. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
Bye.